Okay. I want to explain a bit what's up on the board. An absolutely irreducible representation of the Galois group of Q unramified the RD module. What's the appropriate receptor here? The residue field I'm always going to call little k. Anybody have any other comments about that?
Professor Mazur is not just an outstanding mathematician. In number theory, Professor Mazur basically shaped what is arithmetic geometry today, and he has influenced many of his colleagues at Harvard University and worldwide.
All mathematicians are eternal students. We're constantly trying to understand things that we have glimmers of and are curious about. I mean, it doesn't stop.
So when you wake up in the morning, you think about a lot of different things, but what is the thing you think about pretty much
Brushing
every
my
morning?
teeth.
No, yeah, you brush your teeth.
I'm glad.
No, but really, so you wake up in the morning, let's say
Yep.
you're lying there.
Yeah.
Math?
Yeah, math. Probably.
Always math.
Not always, but it usually is stuff that I've been thinking about and writing and realize that I have an incoherent draft waiting for me once I get dressed. An idiotic collection of notes that I have and try to make them more reasonable.
You can't imagine not doing math anymore.
I don't even know what not doing it would mean.
Oh,
I mean,
I see.
because it permeates things and.
On the other hand, he doesn't think of himself as a mathematician.
Right, that's true.
What does that mean? You're just Barry?
No, he's a philosopher.
Oh, he's a philosopher.
Yeah. Thinking around the complexities. Mathematics is a long conversation, and it's a conversation between student and teacher, and sometimes it's not clear who's the student and who's the teacher. Yep. Right. My father was a printer, was a foreman in a print shop. But he was a very good violinist, played with ensembles all his life, and was absolutely devoted to music. I mean, that was his passion. He was perfectly happy to play duets with me, even though I knew that here I was struggling and he was in his element. You know? He had this game that he would play. He would ask me a question. What number, when you double it and add 1, gives 11? And I would work on it, and I would usually, by trial and error, I would find the answer, and then he would give me another question. And at one point he said, you know, you're doing this by trial and error. What you should do, and this I'll teach you, I'm going to give you a secret. You take a piece of paper, you write, let X be that number. I felt blessed to have this secret, which I took as a family secret. And then all of a sudden, maybe years later, I don't know how many years later, the teacher goes to the blackboard and sort of begins to teach algebra, let X be. I thought, she is revealing the family secret.
Here we are for Barry Mazur's 80th birthday conference, the very first day. And we're soon to enter Science Center B, where the conference will officially begin, so it's tremendously exciting.
I would like to welcome you all to the Harvard Math Department on the occasion of this wonderful celebration of the 80th birthday of our esteemed colleague, Professor Barry Mazur. His resume is easy to memorize. PhD, 1959, Princeton, Harvard, 1959 to present. Those of you with a more topological frame of mind might also know Barry as the author of the Mazur swindle, that you cannot simplify a manifold by connected sum. So if a plus b is equal to 0, then you can write 0 by adding a plus b to itself over and over again, and then you just move the parentheses around and you get that a is equal to 0. And amazingly, that actually works.
Much later in his life and my life, when he was in his mid-70s, my father got a hankering to learn about mathematics. And he began to study it studiously. I mean, really worked on it. And not only that, he would love to get my goat. For example, mathematicians do not think that 1 is a prime. He would say, now, really, you have to explain to me again. Why isn't 1 a prime number? I was born in 1937, and I started in the yeshiva when I was 4. I don't know. My grandmother just put me in there. So that's 41, mid-Second World War. Not a word. They didn't say anything about what was happening. Nothing. On the other hand, every month or so, there would be a new kid speaking only Yiddish, and I befriended one of the new arrivals, and I even went to his orphanage to play with him. But of course, he didn't say anything. I realized that there was a war. It took me many years before I realized that there was something specific about the Jewish population in Europe that was connected to the war. No one said that. I began life as an ultra-Orthodox Jew, The path of my life had been set by my great-uncles through the mediation of my grandmother, who was wary of having that tradition somehow softened by my parents. And she figured she better take charge to keep me Orthodox, and wanted me to not only continue the tradition, but go to the yeshivas and become a rabbi and devote myself to devotional things. I didn't, but thinking about it, I think it was a wonderful place. One thing I remember sort of vividly, one of the teachers, he said, what we're after is the infinite cheese of knowledge. And we're mice, little mice. We're all just nibbling on this cheese. We'll never devour it. But it's the effort of nibbling on the cheese that sort of makes what we're doing meaningful and worthwhile. It's called Imagining Numbers, particularly the square root of -15.
His mind is always on, and he's interested in absolutely everything. I couldn't imagine a better person. When I really press him, he admits that he feels that he's really a philosopher who happens to be doing mathematics, rather than the other way around.
It's really, really hard to summarize his influence because it's been so pervasive in so many different directions, what Barry has done. there were these great theories developed, which were really not applied to specific concrete problems, essential problems, before Barry came around and showed people that this could be done. He's enormously well-read in all kinds of mathematics and non-mathematics. So that's been always kind of interesting to observe, how he focuses on certain essential problems, things that he feels to be essential to work on, while keeping this vast reservoir of knowledge somewhere in the background. But it's a bit mysterious, of course, how the interaction between what he knows and what comes out on paper.
You're already really interested in math.
What I thought I was interested in is the philosophy of electronics.
The philosophy of electronics?
Yeah.
So wait a second, you knew about electronics?
Let's say I was not good at soldering one thing to another, but I did. I made my own transmitter.
You did?
Yeah. And the thing that really confused me was, how is it that this energy comes out of the transmitter and to the receiver, and there's a moment of time when it's nowhere?
Yeah.
That's not
That's
physics.
physics.
I called it philosophy of electronics.
It's obviously not electronics, right?
In fact, I went to MIT thinking I was going to really understand what I thought of as the philosophy behind electronics. And I go into the library and I see these books and books and books and books of philosophy of electronics, but they're called mathematics. People very often say there was a eureka moment of discovery, but for me, it's a kind of mulling process. You can think of it as the tide slowly coming in. The waters are rising, filled with ideas, and then receding. And as the tide rises, certain ideas sort of come to you as being perhaps more important than you had thought them to be, and then they become even more important. Then they sort of scream at you.
The thing that was really, that I could say that I learned from him was a certain degree of faith. That as you put the ideas together, if you find an idea interesting, as you keep returning to it, you keep telling the story, you tell it slightly better each time you do it, right? The story becomes better and better. You add more ingredients, you add more examples. And to have a certain degree of faith that this eventually turns into something substantial.
Lots of people, when they think about mathematics, they think proof, demonstration, conclusions. But there's also room for simple conjecture, that you may have no way or even no expectation of being able to actually prove, at least at the moment, that would be reasonable to expect if everything we happen to know at the present is true, and in some sense nothing else. And yet that conjecture, it unifies your thoughts, it unifies the field, it inspires you to work harder. We're trying to constrain the infinite possibilities, but keep them infinite, if they're infinite. Religious devotion, it gives one an early respect for intensity. So you would go to morning prayers, and then you'd come home, you'd have lunch. But if you were somehow more deeply devoted, you would go a little earlier before the afternoon prayer. 1 or 2, to my eyes then, extremely old men would sit at the table chanting, sort of mumbling really, the Psalms. And I loved that. An extra, a hyper I would just sort of look in awe at them and watch them. I was 12, and it was ham radio that fascinated me, which meant I wanted to learn some electronics. And that's what convinced me that I did not want to go to the yeshiva high school, which would be the next stop, according to my great uncles in my education. And they essentially convoked me to their house in Borough Park in Brooklyn and said, you have to explain yourself. And I said, well, I want to learn a little bit of electronics, and that's the way to do it. I'm going to go to this high school. They said, if so, we'll never speak to you again. Neither my father nor my mother said a word, either to me before or during this convocation. But they didn't have to. I knew that they were totally for me, for my decision. The prediction, we will not speak to you anymore, held for 58 years. Remember God, said my grandmother, as she fixed my sliding skull cap and put me in my first day's first grade seat. She kissed me and said, God is in learning. She took, year after year, the same night school classes, read the same books. Silas Marner, Modern Hebrew, Hamlet, whose margins she had covered with commentary as if they were scripture. I believed when she underlined whirlwind of your passion, pronouncing it whirlwind, and told me it meant religious ecstasy. For I believed that all was religion, she all religion, and anything other in life was mirage.
Or the boxing was when you were 14?
Yeah, 13, 14, yeah. There was a gym, it was called Bothner's Gym. It was above Horn and Hardart cafeteria and next door to Hubert's Flea Circus. This was on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue in New York City.
That's a different impression of you.
What? I was a good street
You
fighter?
were cagey in that you got through, but they kept beating you up.
Oh, they kept me, yeah. I mean,
Wait, let me see your teeth. Are they fake teeth?
Yeah.
Let me see.
Really a professional wrestler's gym. But there were little corners where there were boxers. And what I loved about it is there would be this old wrestler. He had been a professional, clearly no longer, but he would practice his moves constantly in this nearly deserted gym. And I would practice my moves too. And I thought, oh yeah, it's a kind of respect for our intensity that I loved. Also in the gym there was a professional, I think she was a trapeze artist. One corner of the gym was devoted to her. I was very attracted to this woman. She was 10, 15 years older than me, but she would go to the 42nd Street Library, and I would go with her, and she would always take out a certain box of Jungian archival material and record whatever she was recording about those archives in a tiny notebook. And so I would take out a book on electronics and read the book, mainly to hang out with this woman. And I did get a concussion, but...
You did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From boxing?
From boxing, yeah. I got yeah.
So do you think did your math get better or worse?
Neither. It had no effect. I mean, Gretchen is the most extraordinary human being I know. I'm telling about how I met you. I invited her to go bowling. I mean, I was intrigued by her, but I had no idea what possessed me to invite her to go bowling, because I'd never gone bowling in my life. Never before and never after. Neither she. But we went bowling, and we've been together ever since, in fact. It was the luckiest moment of my life, that bowling business.
Being married to a mathematician, or being close to a mathematician, in some ways it's like living with an obscure priest. I used to think maybe it's like being the rabbi's wife, but it's not. The rabbi is a lot more transparent than the mathematician. So for me, it's like living with the shaman. Who knows where he goes to on those real flights of imagination. On the other hand, I do know the world of the imagination, so in that way we're quite attuned.
The forest overhang. They cling to the ascent as hairy vectors, tangent to lava-like climbing earth. Ponderosa pines, insouciant scrabblers that crowd up the mountain walls, shadowing the rushing MacLeod. One tree's snake-catcher bared roots holds up the entwined trunk of its neighbor. Entanglement bestows stability, while one bough's drape, goatees of Spanish moss, gets us to remember fragility, for the cable of humanity is long, is strong, woven of myriad short, venerable threads. This soul, that loss. Zeke is so large in her thoughts. He was a scholar of ancient religions. He was a classicist, a philosopher, I think, too. Although he wouldn't say that, I think. He went to sleep in his own bed with his wife and child, and just didn't wake up. It was quite a shock, quite a unimaginable. He had such a clear eye for what was essential. I know when I lead my life, there are so many things that are clearly not very much at the core of my being that I get entangled with. Not him. He was fantastic.
Where do you want to sit?
He was deeply inspired by his daughter, Naya. And they would do just wonderful things together. Naya is an amazing presence. It's a real joy to see her grow, and to be with her.
Ruff. This one or this one? Mm. And this is Milk, Eggs, Unicorn.
Milk, Eggs, and Unicorn. Oh, very good.
They
take it. You remind me of... No, you don't.
Of who? So someone awful?
No. No.
Oh.
No. Naya. At one point, she would stand on the dresser, which is very close to the bed, and she would jump from the dresser to the bed. Okay, and Zeke forbade that. Said that you can't do this; it's very dangerous. Well, at one point, she was about ready to do her act. She was standing on the dresser, and then Zeke comes into the bedroom. And she is standing on the dresser. And she sees Zeke. She says, I have 2 questions about elephants. Mathematical questions are very often, so they're hustlers in a way. Asking, for example, what are the solutions to a certain equation? Now, sometimes you want to know the solutions because you need them, because they're beautiful. Sometimes you want to know them because you really want to know not what something is, but why something is. And the true response to a why question, well, it may not be translatable at all into words. It may be rather just an inner felt experience of understanding.
The Mazur swindle might also refer to other parts of Barry's career. For example, I think Barry has, in some sense, swindled modernity. So the conventional wisdom is that a Renaissance man is impossible in the present day and age. Barry has confounded this conventional wisdom as much by the breadth of his curiosity as by the breadth of his knowledge.
I really appreciate it. Speechless.
It's easy with you, Barry.
I usually am not impressed by anybody, even super strong mathematicians, but he is impressive. He does mathematics somehow, like making a music. So he intentionally make music something starting subtle way, but at some point he would prove big theorems in the climax consciously, I think. That's very difficult. You do something consciously in math.
When I was a child, I took piano lessons, but that may have been 3 or 4 years and then stopped. When I came here to Harvard, I had some extra time and I thought I would start again to play the piano. And I took lessons, and I loved it. I had a marvelous teacher. His name is David Bacon. He said, there are 2 ways of learning the piano the way I'm learning it. One is to really learn the literature that you wanted to learn, which was largely Beethoven. Learn it as literature. Try to understand it as a whole, as well as learning this movement of that sonata. It's a serious undertaking to nudge people to higher levels of meaning.
So I kind of see that as like fundamental before you get into the labor theory. And
I thought of him as a model, as a teacher. I kept thinking, if I could catch the genius of the way in which he knows how to nudge you in the right direction, if I could sort of transport that to mathematics, that would be great. I'm not sure I ever achieved his genius for it, but he was a guide. You're perfect.
Oh, good. I generally try to go to office hours as much as possible just to soak in whatever tidbits of wisdom Professor Mazur might give me. Not only is he mathematically just one of the greatest,
Okay,
but
wait a sec.
he's philosophically unbelievably subtle as well. This needs to make it in there. I apologize, but any subject that he teaches and that I've learned, had the privilege of learning from him, and I've been better for it.
The reading group began, I think it must have been 40 years ago. Now that's a tradition in Judaism where two people get together, they hover over a text. The text might be theological, it might be philosophical. One of them reads it and both of them make comments. It's usually called chavruta, which means just friendship.
O Julius Caesar, thou art mighty yet. Thy spirit walks abroad and turns our swords in our own proper entrails.
So call the field to rest and let's away to part the glories of this happy day.
Grown.
Grown, yes. It has a wonderful flavor because I feel, at least, I wouldn't get anything as much out of it had I read it alone.
There's almost something sort of anthropologically quite interesting thing about seeing the interaction between Professor Mazur and the rest of the world. I mean, he's sort of like Master Yoda sitting in his chair in the third row in the middle, and every now and then he says, "But what about P inverse?" And the whole room goes quiet, and everyone ponders. It's never a gotcha question. It's always done out of a spirit of sort of clarifying for everyone, and out of a spirit of generosity and kindness.
3 is already interesting.
But can you replay?
58 years later, we reconnected with the family. I was 70. I got a phone call from one of the cousins of that ultra-Orthodox wing. His grandchildren had been playing around his bookcases, and out of the bookcase fell the prayer book of my grandmother, where my grandfather would inscribe the birth dates, the marriage dates, the death dates of people in the family. I remember the last time I saw this cousin was we played stickball in the streets of Borough Park at one point. And he said, "Happy birthday, Barry." There are these abiding questions about our meaning in life, meaning in existence. And these are questions that you don't want to definitively answer. These are questions that you want to use. We don't want them to go away. We want them to keep getting us to see more. Sudden. That word sounds like a sullen thump, a weight dropped from a great height. I shudder in the company of its clever pretensions and tensions. Sudden. I prefer viscous changes, the ever slow emergence of some speck of the new, a chick, tentatively lifting one leg out of the shards of its egg. No emergency.
Algebra is a set of laws governing numbers. Algebra is interested in general laws, not specific cases. Now, for example, 3 plus 5 equals 8. Now that's arithmetic. Now we tip the number blocks backwards. X plus Y equals Z.